Hi, my name's Moonpie and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Battlefield 2042 is coming out in the coming months and I'm sure you've seen the hype built around the marketing material. Personally, I think it looks great, but that's the point of marketing material, to make something look great and build hype. Now, Battlefield 5's marketing wasn't perceived too well, but at the very least it obviously didn't highlight any of the bugs that were present at the release of the game. Bugs that still persist 3 years after the game came out. Furthermore, critical functionality you'd expect in any game, let alone a AAA title, has been completely lacking in Battlefield 5. It concerns me that the push to a live service model is in some way a cover for releasing an unfinished game, and I'm worried this is going to reoccur in 2042. To refresh your memory, here's a quick overview of still outstanding issues and bugs in Battlefield 5. Joining off friends through Origin is extremely temperamental. Sometimes it works, often doesn't work at all. Joining a game via a queue occasionally will throw you to the back of the queue when you've reached number 1 in the queue. The quit button needs to be pressed multiple times to close the game. Post-game stats frequently don't work, and in one instance it didn't work for anyone for several months. Sometimes when you die, you can't respawn. It is important to note that the devs have actively tried on multiple instances to fix this. It is better, but the issue still exists. Sometimes after completing an action like sliding or jumping through a window, you're unable to shoot your gun. Audio is awful. Your game is capped to a certain number of sounds at a given time. Any sounds that are queued beyond that cap are not heard at all. This is obviously problematic when you have enemies running around you and you can't hear them. Speaking of enemies running around, sometimes when joining a game, your teammates' footsteps are extremely loud and you can't hear enemy footsteps at all. Palm trees and destroyed barbed wire will frequently have invisible hitboxes you can't go through. Server caps are 32v32. You will occasionally see unusual situations where it's 32v15, 32v19, something along those lines, as the people on the losing team begin to leave. There is typically a queue for these games, and I hypothesize that this is because the number 1 person in the queue is trying to join off someone on the winning team, and because their team is full, it's not putting them in there and not letting anybody else into the game. Ribbons not working as they have in previous games. Currently, you can achieve each ribbon once and that's it. Devs have reported they have intended players to be able to achieve ribbons more than once, just like in previous Battlefields, but they don't have the tech to make it work. Non-existent server balancing. To balance a server, players have to join off their friends on the enemy team to try and balance it. Non-existent anti-cheat. Admins have to manually ban cheaters. The real kick in the guts for the previous 2 mentioned points is that the devs released a blog post telling people that they were going to release this functionality. The blog post was subsequently removed and nothing was mentioned about it again. On the topic of server admins, admins have very limited server management, and not to mention this functionality was only recently introduced years after the game's release. In previous Battlefields, you had a great deal more capacity to manage the server and the loaded config. You also get stuck on random rocks and sticks on all maps. Trying to spawn on squad mates who are considered in combat will revert you back to this respawn screen. This was implemented to stop people spawning in the middle of gunfights, but on maps like Underground and Merida with a lot of players in a small area, I've counted up to 5 times in a row that I've tried to spawn on someone and it throws me back to the login screen. Extremely frustrating. Tankers and pilots who routinely go 50 and 0. Sure, there are bad players who don't achieve the high KDs, but the good vehicle players routinely being able to get this score without too much effort is a little bit concerning. Third-person camera on tanks, glancing blows on tanks, doing 3 damage with a Piat sucks. Squad leader defend orders not awarding points randomly. The time to kill being changed not once, but multiple times, changing the very foundation of all the guns in the game and the game itself. The lack of an Eastern Front and a number of other theatres of war. No Russians, no Australians, so many missed countries. And finally, the piece de la resistance of all of this, many of which of these issues would have probably been resolved if this hadn't been dropped, but a lack of the promised live service game model. Now, I've probably missed some things, but I'm sure you get the picture. There's quite a few issues with Battlefield 5. Collectively, most of the issues I've mentioned are not game breaking and as such wouldn't have been prioritized particularly high on a list to get resolved. But as players having to deal with many of these issues on a very regular basis, it slowly grinds on the overall enjoyment of the game. Now, I don't doubt that many of the mentioned issues would have been resolved if the live service model had not been canned, but I can only assume based on a lack of MTX and overall game sales, it clearly wasn't financially feasible for a live service model to continue. Now, for what it's worth, I don't think Battlefield 5 is a bad game. I wouldn't have put close to 1,000 hours into the game otherwise. I just hope that DICE and EA have learnt from their mistakes for 2042. I'm somewhat hesitant to expect that they have though, and instead fully expect them to jump on the MTX train with their seasonal operators and related skins, battle passes, and whatever else they're going to try to do to grab our money. I'm just really hoping they balance the release of all the MTX content with actively working on resolving any outstanding bugs or issues. So we'll see what happens when 2042 comes out. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think if you're fully buying into the hype, you're setting yourself up to get burned. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with what I've said? Do you feel I've missed anything? Let me know in the comments. Now, this video has had a fairly pessimistic outlook, but I'll also be releasing a video that talks about how 2042 might be awesome. Now, they're obviously incorporating a number of different changes from what you'd expect from a typical Battlefield game, so it'll be interesting to go into that to see how it could potentially make 2042 the best Battlefield game yet. So stay tuned for that video. In the meantime, feel free to check me out on Twitch, link is in the description. But whatever the case, that'll be me for now. I'll see you again next time. Bye.